Arne, tell me a little bit about you and Intuo. What does Intuo do? Who's your target audience with the business?
Yeah, so Intuo is basically a SaaS solution. And what we do is we try to move companies from process-based performance management to engagement-based performance management. So try to use the performance management process, the yearly appraisals, as a force of good instead of a force of evil, getting managers to talk to their people, getting people to give more feedback, creating cultures that retain people. That's the general gist of it.
Okay. And what do you do in the company?
I'm COO, and
Mhm.
so a bit of everything, as you can imagine. Our CEO is more focused on everything vision and product related, and I try to get the commercial and customer facing end of the business working properly.
Got it. Okay, so one of the main reason why we're talking is because I was really intrigued by your LinkedIn presence. I'm on LinkedIn quite frequently for it's the nature of my job, and I really liked how you engage with your audience, the content you put out there, and I was thinking this is exactly what I encourage some of my clients
Uh-huh.
do what you are doing. So I was thinking it would be great if you could share some of the lessons you've learned, some of your approaches. So this will be the topic of our conversation today. So I was
Perfect. Yeah.
thinking, so great. So I saw that you have as your main title, even before COO of Intuo, you call yourself an HR speaker. So this seems to be a core part of your identity.
Yeah, and there's different media for doing different things. Like on Facebook, I don't say that I'm an HR speaker, obviously. And for me, HR is really a channel to get content out there, and it makes things easy if you just, frame yourself like that. So that when I try to add people or when I post content on there, that people know that they can expect more of that same content of me, since I'm a, HR expert, quote unquote. And I'm yeah, and I'm in real life. I'm more modest than I would than I would be on LinkedIn. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an HR expert straight away, but you know, being a SaaS company, we generally talk to a whole lot of other companies and potential customers, and the learning curve for an industry is just so steep, and that's what I wanted to convey there with my personal brand.
Interesting. So, do you also, I assume you also do things like that you approach people proactively who you think would benefit from what you preach, or is it more reactive, your LinkedIn?
Uh, no, I do approach people proactively, but I do that in like very niche segments at a time. For example, what I did once was I went to Chicago to go and onboard a customer. And because I was there, I'm not always there, I live in Europe. And since I was there, I started adding everybody in Chicago that I could find, automated, of course, with a tool called LinkedIn Helper. You could use DuckSoup as well. And started adding everybody with the title Chief HRO. Then I made this little LinkedIn group, and I said, look, I've got this exclusive Chicago group, which is very niche, of chief HROs. And the idea is to do some get-togethers and to post some content for chief HROs in Chicago. And actually, when you make it that concrete, that was like in my invitation message, right? And when you make it that concrete, the acceptance rate is actually quite high, and that builds kind of a little network. Although it's not very substantial, it is a little network right there in Chicago. And then my idea for conversion was to invite everybody in the group 2 months later when I went to come to an event right there. And we could talk about Intuo or whatever content they wanted to talk about right there and then. But the workshops with the customers ended up being so busy that we didn't get around to it.
Okay. So that is a good strategy for when you are about to go to a city but in your case, it was Chicago. So a couple of months in advance, you just add people, you invite them to this LinkedIn group that you create for the purpose. And then you get people to congregate to maybe share a couple of ideas with the explicit invitation. 2 months from now, I'm going to be holding a small event like after work drinks, let's get together.
Yeah,
And
and
is this the
I
right
think the most
recipe?
The most important CTA there was not the drink and the event, because I didn't put that in the invitation. The only thing I put in the invitation is I've started a group for Chicago chief HROs. If you want to join, the time is now, kind of thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I added them to the group, posted some content on the group, and tried to convert those people from the group into an event later.
Okay. How much time did you wait from inviting them to the group to then trying to convert them?
Yeah, that's right. So inviting them to the group, then trying to get them to the event, and on the event convert them. So there's actually another step in between inviting them to the event.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, how long between you inviting them to the group, seeding some content in there, and then inviting them to the event?
Oh yeah, about 4 weeks.
4 weeks. Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Is that and has this strategy, has it worked well in other occasions, or was this the only time you tried this?
This was the only city-based approach, but I did try some. Although I did London as well, but there I didn't convert with an event. I just tried to get people into a group and then post content there, and then slowly have them, you know, follow me and convert in a more subtle way, so to say. And that usually works pretty well. I think the acceptance rate. I didn't really look it up or put it in Excel, but you know, to my feeling, it should be about half of people that really accept your invite if it's niche enough, right? London chief HROs, and if then you involve an industry, then it's really niche, and people will be, you know, inclined to accept. Like for example, chief HROs of FMCG companies in London, for example.
Okay. Great. Well, so we jumped right into one specific tactic, so that's brilliant. I would like to though have a little bit more of a background in terms of how did you start your LinkedIn journey? Has this always been part of your arsenal, also in previous jobs that you've had, or was this something that you now consciously chose? Okay, I'm going to be doing acquisition and commercial stuff for Intuo. Let's see what I can do, and just consciously plan that out how you do LinkedIn. What's your story there?
Well, I think that it started, I think, a year and a half ago, and that was the period where everybody was posting these selfie videos on LinkedIn, and I was kind of disappointed to see, well, disappointed and excited at the same time, because I was disappointed to see that the average content out there was uh, pretty bad, so to say. Like most people just kept on saying the same stuff over and over again, and it was all just drama and not much content. So so that kind of disappointed me. But on the other hand, I was very excited because it became pretty apparent that the LinkedIn algorithm put forward the videos a lot more than the written text. You know, because I completely missed the boat on the, you know, I know you probably remember, right? These little written text, the 10 to 20 sentences that people put in there quite dramatically.
Yeah.
I felt like all of a sudden the LinkedIn algorithm preferred videos, and that was very apparent in my feed, and definitely those selfie videos. So I was like, let me try a couple, you know, because I talk to a lot of HR people, so and I see this content come by, and I think I can do a better than average job when I see all that content pop by. So that's when I got triggered to start doing it myself, and then I started making those selfie videos.
Okay. And from then on, you now have transitioned into many different formats. Can you talk about those and what has worked really well for you?
Yeah, sure. So those selfie videos, they worked pretty well. They didn't convert into business actually, but they converted into speaking engagements, which then in turn converted into business indirectly. And since then, what I've done is I've switched to actually I'm just tracking what the LinkedIn algorithm is doing and what kind of content they prefer. And I feel like lately uploading PDF where you get some previews of the first few pages or even previews of all the pages and you can scroll through the PDF is something that the LinkedIn algorithm is quite fond of. And you get a lot of exposure if you post something that's valuable there. And so that's what I started doing, I think 5-6 months ago. And then I learned that by getting likes, you get some sort of virality effect. But by getting comments, the virality effect is a lot bigger because you sometimes even get like a thing in your feed saying person X, your connection X has commented on post Y, for example. And so for me, the trick now for conversion is uploading that PDF and then getting people to comment on something, that creates some sort of interaction as well. You can then comment back, and you can, using LinkedIn Helper, then add all those people that commented and start a conversation. And that's literally what we did. And then people that answer, I then answer back, and I converted, like my last post, I think had 500,000 views and about, I think, 1,800 comments, something like that. And we converted that into actually 6 commercial qualifying meetings. So that was quite successful.
That's amazing. What was that about?
So that was a one-on-one toolbox. I feel like if you post that PDF content, it has to be something that really brings value, because there's no shortcut for value, I think. A drama only gets you so far. And so the one-on-one toolbox was actually something that HR could download and hand out to their managers, so they could have better one-on-ones. And there were all these little models in there, some sort of preparation you could do for your one-on-one, some conversation starters, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really something very concrete, very tangible. People could just print it out. And I'd given them a preview, but I'd hidden some of the models. And then I'd said, if you comment on this post, I'll send you the full version. And then
that's a very good tool.
Yeah. So people were very inclined to comment, and then using the LinkedIn Helper tool, I then automated the sending of the PDF of the full version.
Perfect. Excellent. So one of the hypotheses that I have for good LinkedIn engagement is that, and you hinted at that, is that you really need to do something original and something unique, i.e. add value and not just drama, as you put it. Can you mention maybe other examples? For example, I saw that you wrote this article. It was 2 years ago, but I found it striking because it was up there among your most liked articles. The one where you take Simon Sinek's why framework and you draw an analogy to a case that you have observed. When I'm thinking about what is quality on LinkedIn, this to me is one such hallmark where you show some unique thinking. You take somebody else's framework and you apply it to your world, which is HR.
Yeah, well, I experimented with those articles, but they were very hard to convert, and I only got about 80 likes on that article. So compared to 500,000 views, that's like nothing.
Yeah.
And so for me, the articles are not a good way to build a brand or convert, because it's not, let's say, digestible, if that's a word enough. It's not easy, it's not simple, it's not it takes you more than a minute to understand what's going on, etc. So that's why I've switched to making it as tangible as possible, as in your face as possible. And I've made this little HR innovation game just using PDFs. And so the first thing they had to do was select an HR subdomain, like recruiting, for example. And then second thing they had to do is select a new technology that's coming up, for example, voice. And then the third question was, write down in the comment what you think is going to change about that HR domain if that technology gets matured, and so that's interactive. It's simple. You don't actually have to do a lot about that to create that. You just have to know a little bit about the trends, and so that's easy, that's simple. I do think that those kind of things works best. And then if you if you understand what kind of little tools and mechanisms and things are going to help people, I think that right now is the most valuable content, because there's enough intellectual content out there that takes a lot of time for you to digest. And I feel like a lot of people that write content on LinkedIn just want to show to a lot of other people that they're very intelligent. But I mean, this sounds cynical, but a lot of that is good content, but it's not good, value for time, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I have to spend a lot of time. I get a little bit of value because I learn a little bit. But if you give me in 1 minute some very concrete PDF that inspires me, or that actually helps me with a very concrete problem I have, that's a lot more value for time, if you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I recently saw this thought and I was quite intrigued by it, in that there's that the word, like the time of how-to content has slightly passed or is about to pass, and what you need to do more of is change in mindsets, change in kind of convictions of what you think is right, almost like identity shifting things. Would you agree, or is this something, would you say that you've had still good results with how-to content?
Well, it depends. I feel like how-to content is easy. And like if you say 7 ways to or 7 steps to, people are like let's say, perception of those posts alone kind of degrade the value of your posts, because you see a 7 steps to and you think, okay, this is again one of those stupid Forbes articles where the value is completely lost, and I have to click through 1,000 ads before I really get to the list. So that's the kind of the subconscious idea you get when you see those kind of things. And so I generally don't do a lot of content that's very how-to-ish. I work a lot more with tangible models and tangible things people can do, and for example, checklists. Checklists are very good. That's kind of how-to, but it's a lot more concrete, because you can literally, again, you can print it and you can start using it. So I'd like to think that how-to content is still very relevant, but I'd like to take it a step further and make it really usable content, stuff you can use directly right there and then. Because I had another one that had 1,000 likes, I think, a couple of months back, and that was just a strategic HR business partner checklist. So what you have to do to become a strategic HR business partner. And then I just asked which ones did I forget, and then people started interacting with that.
Excellent. And wait, let me look at my questions, because you answered a lot of them. Have you, yeah, for example, one thing that's also stood out to me is that you don't shy away from controversy. Like, for example, you questioning established thing, like you should be ditching the competency ratings, right? That was one of your more recent posts. Is this something that you would say people should be willing to do, or would you say this does not really influence the virality of your content? I feel that being controversial a little bit and saying that you're against something that most people believe is right, that sounds like a good recipe, because it will just make people think, and anything controversial attracts attention. Would you agree or not?
I think controversy increases credibility to some extent, as long as you're not controversial for the sake of it. You really have to believe what you're saying, and you really have to be able to give good arguments of the thing you're convinced of. But it brings credibility, because I won't set aside my values and what I believe in just because I want to let's say, speak to a larger audience. And this has got to do with selecting your target audience as well, right? Because even for your personal brand, you have to have some sort of target audience in mind. If you just want to speak to anybody, that's going to be very hard. Like, for example, Gary Vaynerchuk is all about aspiring entrepreneurs and that kind of stuff. So he has a very good idea of who's the person sitting behind his computer watching my content. And I have the same thing. And I want to speak to like progressive HR managers that want to challenge what they've done so far, and that want to challenge the existing models. And so because I have that person in mind, I don't shy away from controversy. And because I have that person in mind, controversy is a good thing. But if you think about IT security guys that are very much all about protocols and about leaving things as is, maybe that's a very bad example, but still, then probably controversy is not going to work that well, I think.
Interesting, because I'm thinking when you're on LinkedIn, you can kind of be your true self, and meaning like what you consume, right? Because nobody's really monitoring what you consume. And so I'm thinking, especially somebody who's very much bound inside a rule framework, like IT managers would be, that they will use the opportunity when you post something controversial, that they will want to break out and at least be curious about it. Right. So that's kind of usually, that's why I like controversy in any case, to be honest.
You're right. Yeah, there is a lot of like clickability in controversy. So I have to follow you there. But the thing is that people are onto you quite quickly if you use controversy just for the sake of clickability. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you want to use controversy to really build a sustainable brand, you have to believe in it and you have to really stand behind it and think about the person that's going to read it. And only then will it make sense. But you're definitely right. There is a lot of, let's say, clickability and controversy.
Yeah, and especially also because in HR, I feel that especially HR people are very much rule and process bound. So I feel that there is probably quite a bit of potential for controversy.
Yeah, that's right. Even though I once posted an article about how like salary is not a big motivator,
Ha!
it's a demotivator, but it's not a motivator. If you catch my drift, like if you feel like you're not being paid fairly, then you're going to be demotivated and you're going to be disengaged. But increasing someone's salary is motivating only for a very short term, and there's enough research that
Yeah.
shows exactly that, right? But so I posted that on LinkedIn, and the reactions were so negative that I think it actually it's still online, by the way, but it's an Intuo ad, I think. The reactions were so negative that it actually hurt my brand more than I think it did very well. But I'm still willing to defend that argument for anybody anywhere. But I don't think I'm going to be. I think I'm going to be more careful in and as to how I word it and what the title is going to be, et cetera, because I don't just want to go for clickability. I want to go for credibility and use controversy to create more credibility and not just
Yeah.
clickability.
Interesting. When do you think does a controversial argument dip into being detrimental to your brand if the negative comments outweigh the positive ones?
Well, it kind of depends on what kind of brand, because you can polarize, right? If the bad comments are from the bad people and you create a common enemy, like people who don't understand, quote unquote, then I think controversy can help. And you're like, for example, if I would post something saying old school HR managers never get this, then you polarize a little bit, and then it can actually help your brand. But if it's just like too sensitive for people, and if it's like, for example, you become very political, or you really touch people's core values, then I think it really hurts your brand. So it's not so much about the negative comments or the positive comments. It's more about again, your target audience, and whether you create something that binds your target audience, that triggers your target audience, or whether something really hurts them almost.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Do you see a high correlation between those posts that get a lot of likes and comments with how much business comes out of it?
What do you mean exactly? Like,
As in,
can I
like,
can I convert all of those posts? Is that
no, not
your?
all of those, not all, of course, but let's say, does an article that gets or a post that gets 1,000 likes
Yeah.
get 10 times more business out of it than an article that gets you 100 likes? Of course, just roughly speaking. But is there linearity in the?
To be honest, the only time I got to convert directly from LinkedIn is with that last post where I used people's comments to have them ask for the full version of the PDF I posted.
Yep.
And all the other times, the conversion was more around subtly creating a better personal brand and having people add me on LinkedIn, and following me for the other content that I was putting out there. So there's not much I can say about that, except that the comment thing worked really well.
The comment thing, yeah. And if I asked you, do you know how much new business, and so like, can you put a revenue figure to all your LinkedIn activity?
No, that's kind of impossible. I think the LinkedIn activity, for example, led into a couple of meetings from people I already knew and I just hadn't seen before, that bumped across my content and were like, hey, maybe we should go for breakfast or lunch and talk about what you guys are doing again, because I see you posting that content. It helped with credibility when I was sitting in meetings. And for example, what the salespeople do sometimes is they exaggerate how much expertise I have, and then they say to a customer who's kind of doubting about our solution or capability to roll it out in their company, they say, look, I'm going to bring the expert. His name is Arne, and then he's going to talk about, how to roll out. And not that I have all the answers, but just by having that introduction, it makes me more credible, And so there's been more speaking engagements. There's been probably some indirect leads that went to the website to see what we were all about. And so all those indirect things have had an impact, but it's very hard for us to quantify that, as you can imagine. We can, however, quantify those 6 meetings that came from the content, but our average closing time is 5 months. So that was only 2 months ago. So I can't say anything about revenue there yet, but I will be in probably 3 to 4 months.
Okay. So you don't have a well-developed attribution model where you're thinking, okay, so I got a meeting out of my post with somebody who already knew me before, so I'm giving this I'm allowing this 30% contribution towards the goal. You don't have something like that, something more mathematical.
Oh, well, no, because we ended the year last year with 1.6 million in ARR, so we're not that big of a SaaS company yet. And I feel like there's paralysis by analysis sometimes in SaaS, and I'm a big, let's say, proponent of just measuring the stuff that's important for the time you're in. And so, for example, concerning attribution, the only thing we really measure is was first touch inbound, was first touch completely outbound, or was it via network? And those are like the 3 big distinctions we make. And other than that, we do an analysis per team, like a team analysis, like what kind of outbound methodology works, and inbound analysis, like what are our email drip campaigns converting, like what kind of landing pages work better, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't do the full shaboozle yet, just because I feel like we're not in that phase yet.
Yeah. Okay. And a lot of my clients, one thing that I'm slightly struggling with, I wonder what you would advise me there, is some of them say they're squeamish about, getting in front of the camera and being more vocal on LinkedIn, allowing a little bit of controversy and so on. They essentially are not LinkedIn natives. And I wonder if this is something, do you believe this can be learned and taught, or do you have to have that kind of in your DNA, or kind of be willing and want to learn this? Can this be taught?
I feel like being in front of a camera doesn't bring you a lot of credibility anymore, because every time I see a selfie video now, I kind of unconsciously start rolling my eyes, because I think, oh my God, this selfie video thing again. So I really don't do that anymore. I feel like it actually is detrimental to the content you're bringing, as opposed to helping you get across the message. So I feel like bringing very tangible, concrete stuff that people can use is really the way to go. For example, I saw it was a Medium post today around the 2019 roadmap of becoming a front-end or back-end developer. And it was just this little, let's say, decision tree that you had to follow to help you become a front-end developer. This is where you have to start, very concrete with some URLs in it, etc. And that's very engaging. That's very helpful. That's very good content. And if you do that like 3-4 times, then you'll see that you're already gonna start building a personal brand. And then I think what does help is if you put snippets online of you speaking to an audience, because that kind of pre-validates the fact that you're allowed to bring good content to me as a LinkedIn consumer, because you're in front of an audience, and that makes sense. But you standing in front of a camera the threshold to do that is so low that we've seen so much bullshit content that I don't think it works anymore. So I wouldn't advise people to do that. Exactly.
Okay, very interesting. So if you have somebody who's completely new to this, what would be like your 3 main pieces of advice what they should be doing? Simply follow your content formats?
I think as with all good strategy, at first, starting out a business, starting out a personal brand, is choose a niche. That would be my number 1 thing. And you can break it up in further niches. You can use, as I said, groups per city, groups per industry, etc. Choose who you want to cater to, and maybe conquer city by city, which is in the United States a very good way of building a personal brand. So that's one, pick niches, right? And then the second thing is think about think about concrete stuff that helps people. For example, presentation templates, decision trees, checklists, games, little online games are in there. Toolboxes that people can print. That's the kind of stuff that works right now. And it's not the hardest stuff to make, because if you know your customer, if you know your target audience, you can almost always make a simple version out of that. An Excel, this and that. Like, for example, let's say right? What kind of stuff you could make is like in LinkedIn post checklist. It's LinkedIn tool generator. You pick an industry, you pick a format for your little tool that you want to post, and then you pick a medium like Excel or whatever, and that's how you, or PDF, and that's, I think, a good way for you to make content, for example. So that's definitely the second thing. And then the third thing is, if you want to convert right now, this is very concrete advice, right? I'd say try to lure people into commenting.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've seen that is a huge impact on shareability. I've done this for a client, and whenever we get somebody to comment, then the views get just through the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Great. Excellent. Thank you very much, Arne. That was incredibly insightful. I'm going to make sure that I'm not only publishing this as a podcast, but also in a easily digestible PDF format. So definitely inspired me to do that. If people want to learn more about Intuo and kind of what kind of size of company do you usually attract, or what kind of use case are they that they kind of want to go from the yearly performance rating to a different type? Where are companies that want to use you? Where are they in their journey?
Well, so my answer to that is very concrete. So we cater to mid-sized businesses, so 250 to 5,000 people, and they have to be people-centric. So consultancy, staffing, software as a service, startup, those kind of, banking as well, more and more these days, because it's where people want to invest enough to make sure that the quality of feedback and coaching and learning is high enough for their employees to keep them, to retain them, that we can make a success out of the project.
Excellent. And do you, in terms of business model, is it by seat or by just a flat fee, or by seat?
By seats, yeah. So mostly it's all of the employees that are on there. Even for a 5,000 people company, we usually do like the whole shaboozle at once. So you pay per seat per year.
Excellent. Great. Arne, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. I'll let you know once we're live.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.